I'm going to take a very practical view of AI today, trying to run through a whole list of different practical applications, just so hopefully you can see the variety of different domains in which AI can be applied. So this is what I'm going to cover. I'll start with a bit of introduction, a bit of scene setting about what AI is and why everyone's talking about it now. I'll have a particular emphasis on what I've called hybrids, that is to say using different techniques working collaboratively to solve practical problems. And I'll finish up with a little bit of a summary of some of the expertise at the University of Portsmouth. So I'd normally make this interactive by posing the question, what is AI? But we're a little bit pressed for time, so I'll just jump straight into the classical definition of what is AI, which is to say mimicking human mental faculties in a computer system. So that's the standard definition. But that in itself poses lots of questions. So, for instance, does the AI need to work the same way as a human, or are you just interested in the outcome? Personally, very interested in practical applications. So for me, it's just the output of the AI system that bothers me. But for others, actually how it works is significant. Then mimicking, that sounds a little bit limiting. So is the AI intended to just match human capabilities, or can it exceed human capabilities in certain domains? Does it need to be able to explain itself? That's quite an important issue in terms of establishing trust in AI systems. The word human is in the definition, but what about animal intelligence? There's quite a lot of work goes on in mimicking animal behaviour, such as foraging and ant colonies and bird flocking, etc., which leads on to the more general question about biologically inspired computing, which is often included within the broad envelope of AI techniques. The other thing about the definition of AI is that in a way it's constantly changing. So here's a very frustrated quote from Rodney Brooks, one of the pioneers of AI. Excuse me, I had to look behind to read it. But he says, every time we figure out a piece of it, it stops being magical. We say, oh, that's just a computation. So we're constantly looking towards AI being the next thing and sort of ignoring what AI has already achieved. So some examples might be chess, for instance, which was one of the big challenges in AI for many years. But actually it was in the 1990s that Deep Blue first beat a grandmaster at chess, and now we think, oh, that old stuff, chess. And likewise, handwriting recognition was a big challenge for many years, but now AI is routinely used in services like the Royal Mail for interpreting handwritten envelopes. But again, we think, that's old stuff, AI is the future. And similarly, voice recognition for automated call services and so forth. So we're constantly moving the goalpost as to what AI actually is. Oops, excuse me. So broadly speaking, I would say AI can be broken down into two categories: knowledge-based intelligence and computational intelligence. The more traditional systems, the more traditional type of AI is knowledge-based, where you're using explicit textual representations of human expertise. So things like rules and storing cases, building software models, etc. On the other side of the taxonomy, we've got the computational intelligence, and you'll see on there it includes things like neural networks and deep learning, which are causing a great deal of excitement at the moment. So really great for spotting patterns in large quantities of data, really useful tools. But it's not the whole picture for AI, it's just part of the AI toolkit. And one of the things I'll be emphasizing today is the power of mixing together different parts of that AI toolkit. And I've put in the middle of my Venn diagram techniques such as fuzzy logic and Bayesian updating, which are explicit textual representations of knowledge, but they have a mathematical model behind them. So that's why I put them somewhere between in the middle of the Venn diagram, in the area of intersection. So AI's been around for a while. So 1956 was an interesting year. That was the year of the release of this film, Forbidden Planet, featuring this character, Robbie the Robot. Obviously it's just fiction, but it's sowed the seed in the public imagination of this humanoid robot that could think and behave the way a human would. 1956 is also the first is the year of the first published use of the term artificial intelligence. It was published as the title of the so-called Dartmouth conference held in New Hampshire in the United States. So that was one definition of the birth of AI. Here in the UK, we might go back to 1950 with Alan Turing's seminal paper in which he proposed the concept of computers that can think. And he also proposed the imitation game, what we now call the Turing test, to test whether a computer could fool a human into thinking they were conversing with another human instead of a computer system. So there's quite a long history. Winding forward, still in the world of fiction, we've got films like this. This is a still from the film called Robot and Frank, which is quite good fun. And as you can see, the robot in that picture does seem to have been inspired, shall we say, by the Asimo robot next to it, which is a real robot built by Honda. Impressive piece of engineering, but a long way short of human intelligence, a long way short of the gold standard set by Robbie. So I would argue that you can build a spectrum of intelligent behaviours. At low levels of understanding, you've got things like coordination, regulation, reaction, through things like language, common sense, vision, perception, which humans can do with barely a conscious thought, through to the high levels of understanding, capturing human expertise and planning capabilities and so forth. And interestingly, the early successes in AI were at either end of the spectrum. So at the lower end of the spectrum, we've had things like this picture here, this automated car manufacturing plant since the 1970s. Whereas at the top end of the spectrum, we've had systems developed in AI since the 60s and 70s which capture human expertise, such as Dendril, a system in the 1960s for interpreting mass spectrograms. In the 1970s, Mycin for interpreting blood disease. And through to the current day, there are systems still being developed using this knowledge-based approach of capturing human expertise. An example that comes to mind is SeisExpert for interpreting seismic data, quite a recent application. But the area that's proved most difficult to mimic in a computer system is that area in the middle. This kind of vision, perception, language, interaction, those kind of things which, as I said, we barely think about. And to see why that might be, here's a visual image. Oops. Here's a visual image. And interpreting images like that is easy for a human, but really quite tricky for a computer system. So we've now reached the stage where there are systems that could quite reliably pick out the presence of a tank in that image. But there's a broad context here. That's not a normal battlefield scenario. You can rapidly recognize that there are civilians on top of that tank, there are normal cars and motorcycles behind it. There's a historical setting in central London. But getting a computer system to do that is more challenging than actually capturing specialised expertise. So, as I said, AI's got a long history of at least 60 years. Doesn't really matter which starting point you choose, but at least 60 years. So why all the hype now? Well, I would argue there are 5 reasons. First of all, ideas that have been proposed amongst the AI researchers over decades are now maturing and are becoming more robust. There's lots of data, everybody's sitting on lots of data, they want to use it, and we now have deep learning algorithms that can exploit that data and find patterns in those data. We've got internet resources, so it's no longer necessary to capture expertise within a single computer system. There's knowledge of variable quality available across the internet. And finally, and I think probably most importantly, computers are now so much more powerful, so that ideas that may have needed a supercomputer a decade or two ago are now practical on everyday computer machines. So the main thrust of the rest of my presentation is going to be about practical applications using hybrid approaches, different techniques from that Venn diagram that I showed you, that toolkit of AI. And I'm going to propose various reasons why I think hybrids are the way forward, but by far and away the most important are the first 2, which is to do with multifaceted problems and using where you need different techniques to tackle different subtasks, and secondly, using one technique to verify another. So let's start with the first category. Oops. I spend a lot of time with a particular model of using software agents working collaboratively. It's a bit like mimicking a team rather than a single human intelligence. The model is meant to be inspired by a group of experts gathered around a blackboard, we might say a whiteboard these days, where one of them might pose a problem on the board, and as others can see a way that they can contribute to the solution, they will add their contribution to the whiteboard, blackboard, and so a solution will evolve. That's the model. This is the computer implementation, where you've got different software modules using any technique you wish, typically a mixture of different AI techniques, working collaboratively and sharing their contribution via an area of shared memory called the blackboard. And we've applied this model in a wide variety of applications. Here's the first one to consider. I'm going to rattle through a number of applications. Plasma deposition is a very specialized manufacturing process. No need to go through the details here, but essentially the plasma is a low-pressure ionized gas. Use it for laying down thin films. We were laying down thin films of artificial diamond. But a tricky process to control. Lots of things that you can measure that I've highlighted in blue. Lots of things you can control that I've measured in red. Unfortunately, that I've indicated in red. But unfortunately, the two do not coincide. So a difficult process to control. This is what the kit looks like. And if you look through the window, that's what the plasma looks like, laying down thin films of artificial diamond, as I say. Well, we built a multi-agent system that used a mixture of rules for controlling the pumping system, fuzzy logic for maintaining the electrical conditions there, neural networks for interpreting the optical spectra for diagnostic purposes, and then this device needed tuning, this thing called the Langmuir probe, which measures electron energy, needs to be tuned. Total of 14 different variables, interdependent variables to be tuned. Difficult for a human, perfect for a genetic algorithm, one of those optimization algorithms that forms part of the AI toolkit. So that you can see for a complex process like that, multiple different AI agents working collaboratively to build an overall system that is able to control that process. Let's look at another example. I had to mention this today because a PhD student who's worked on this has her viva, that's to say her oral examination today about this project. So fingers crossed that goes well. But she's used the multi-agent approach for automated umpiring of table tennis. A lot of work spent on building agents that could follow the table tennis ball against a complex background and of course a rapidly changing scenario, but also knowledge-based agents that represent the rules of the game, table tennis. So again, mixed mode of reasoning required, different types, lots of specialist subtasks needing specialist agents working collaboratively. Another example, working with BT on controlling their telecommunications network. Oops, sorry. So this is what the network looks like. There's a control centre near the Welsh border at Oswestry where they manage and actively intervene in the network to spot points of congestion, loss of service, loss of quality of service, and to actively intervene. So we built an AI system to do that specific task. This is a screenshot. I know you won't be able to read the details of it, but essentially each window that's popped up represents a control action that the AI system, the multi-agent AI system, has initiated. So, is this a pointer here? Yeah, this top left box is an action, so setting cool gapping, which is a way of restricting traffic on a particular part of the network. Similarly, this box here. There are boxes down the right-hand side where an action called setting the trunk reservation factor has been set on particular links in the network. And in this big box here, we've got some rerouting of secondary traffic. So in the background, we've got a neural network which is classifying difficulties on the network, points of loss of service on the network, points of congestion. We've got pop-up actions which are rule-based, triggering different actions. And in the big window here, we've got optimization algorithms being applied to reroute the traffic. So again, a mixed mode of reasoning. Another example. And this is moving on to my second justification for hybrids, where you're using one technique to validate or confirm the conclusions of another. Excuse me while I get my timer up. So here, this is to do with ultrasonic imaging to check the integrity of high-value components. In this case, we're working with the atomic energy industry. Scanning ultrasonically across the world, you produce an image like this, which is not easy to interpret, but a multi-agent AI system can interpret such an image. So first of all, we used a Huff transform to pick out lines in the image, a rule-based approach to pick out the echo from the back wall across the bottom of the image, to pick out this horizontal line, which is across near the top, which is actually an artifact. A bit of filtering, and then the key decision-making screenshot is here. Again, I know you can't read the text, but essentially what's happened here is that a neural network has classified these two areas, these two black boxes, as being associated with a crack tip. In other words, there is a crack running between those two boxes according to the neural network. But how do you trust that? How do you know it's accurate? This is very much, it's very opaque. So in this example, we used other agents, rule-based agents, to look for clarifying and confirming evidence. And it found it. So in this case, if I go back, evidence was found that beneath the hypothesized crack, there was a shadow in the back wall echo. So as viewed with an ultrasonic transducer from above, there was a shadow on the back wall echo, a dip in the intensity. Equally, these were found to be artifacts consistent with ultrasound bouncing between the crack tips and creating the illusion of characteristics in the image here. So there was supporting evidence. So that classification was confirmed. So an important reason for using multiple sources of AI. Moving forward now to a medical application. Here we were looking at the possibility of using an image recognizer to pre-screen for oral cancer. Dentists see ulcers of this nature every day. The top two are examples of everyday harmless ulcers, but the bottom right is an example of a cancerous ulcer. Mouth cancer, oral cancer is really dangerous. You want to pick that up at the earliest opportunity. So using cascaded neural networks, we were able to build a classifier. More work needed here because we didn't really have enough data to build something robust. But the principle was established, that we used cascading neural networks of different types, a mixture of different network architectures to get a good classification. Moving on to a very recent bit of work was to do with scheduling for the rail freight industry, specifically scheduling the drivers, since drivers spent a lot of the time that they're being paid either in a passenger train getting to their next job or even taking a taxi between locations to drive the next train. So we used a genetic algorithm approach which mimics biological evolution towards an optimum to find optimal or near optimal schedules. This is what the system looks like, various things, graphs. You can see various things, specifically the total cost of the schedule, which is the Wight graph, going down during the evolutionary process, so that worked quite nicely. What was really interesting, though, was that this top blue line represents our genetic algorithm showing the cost of the schedule going down as it evolves. Great, that's what we intend. But the red line shows what happens when we introduce another technique, fuzzy logic, to adjust the parameters in real time, adaptively. And you see that you achieve a more optimal schedule, more in fewer iterations, so you more rapidly get towards an optimal schedule. So that's using one technique to set the parameters of another, which is my third justification, or was it the fourth? Fourth justification for using hybrids. And here's my fifth reason for hybrids, which I've called divide and conquer. This is the problem of image registration. In this medical context, a doctor may wish to see both a visual and thermal image superimposed. But if you just simply overlay them, as I have in the bottom right here, they never match. As soon as you've got images from different sources, they'll never match. You need to align one relative to the other. So we used a multi-agent AI system to do just that, as you can see in this image. And what the checkerboard style image is showing is that we've broken it down into component parts, given each agent the task of aligning, registering its part of the image, and then another agent brings it all together. So you've got a nicely aligned, nicely registered image in the bottom right. And that sort of technique isn't just confined to medical domains. Here's one for checking the quality of products for packaging, where we're looking at screen printing of, in this case, shampoo bottles. And this at the top here is the logo as it should look. Here's a defective logo, and the idea was to spot those defects in the printing. Well, in principle, you could just point a camera at these bottles coming off the production line, subtract the live image from a template, Bob's your uncle. But the trouble is, you've got the problem of image registration again. You need to register one image against the other. So we used an AI technique to do that and to spot the defects, as we've done there. So, by way of conclusion, hopefully you've seen lots of specialised applications of AI there, really useful in practical applications. And I would say, in a way, my working definition of AI is it's a system that can perform a task that would otherwise need a human intervention. But equally, we're a long way from generalised AI. That's just to say, the Robbie the robot that can perform the wide range of human behaviours. And here's a quote from Professor Mike Waldridge, who gave evidence to the House of Lords Select Committee on AI. And he says, these advances have been confined to very narrow domains. The Hollywood dream of conscious machines is not imminent, and indeed, I see no path of taking us there. So, on the one hand, we've got lots of really practical, specialised applications which are there and are being deployed now and a great opportunity. But on the other hand, don't believe the scare stories. In either case, I would argue that hybrids, that's a mixed mode of different techniques working collaboratively, is the way forward, and I've given you 5 justifications. Multifaceted problems that require different tools for different subtasks, using one technique to clarify and verify another, capability enhancement, as you saw with those cascading neural networks for oral cancer detection, parameter setting, using one technique to set the parameters of another, as you saw with that rail freight scheduling, and finally divide and conquer, as you saw with the image registration. So just to briefly highlight to you that we have a great deal of expertise in AI at the University of Portsmouth, and I'm in the process of assembling a cluster because essentially our expertise is dispersed amongst various research groups across the university, but effectively we've identified 42 academics, so I want to sort of link them together as an identifiable cluster of academics at the University of Portsmouth, really keen to work with you, whether you're in business or providing some sort of service, a public service. Oops. I can't leave without a plug for the book, in 3 editions, as you heard in the introduction, and I'm talking about a 4th edition, but specifically I'd direct you to adrianhopgood.com, where I've provided some free tools to support AI. Lots of acknowledgements to the people who've worked on the various projects that I've described to you today. So I just want to say thank you very much for your attention, and I'm very happy to take any questions.
Professor Hopgood, thank you very much indeed for your presentation. I have one question. Your thing about rail freight, and especially to drivers, can that be applied to carers as well?
Well, I think the whole caring industry has a lot of potential applications for AI, but what I was specifically talking about in that application was effectively scheduling, making sure you had the optimal use of your resources, and absolutely that would be a case in point. If you're an organisation that's got its resources, its carers available, you can use algorithms like this, optimization algorithms such as genetic algorithms, to find the optimal deployment and scheduling of those carers, absolutely, and it translates across into a wide range of different domains.
Thank you. Richard?
Thank you very much, very inspiring, especially in the medical applications. I find that wonderful. It's a great future in that. But my question is threefold. Are you concerned about, in future, losing control? There's a lot of talk about now that we need to regain control, but control where technology is ruling us and not the other way around. And my other question is, are you concerned about that the human aspects, our human interaction, is going to fade whilst technology is taking over? That's deeply worrying to me. And the third one is, are you looking into health implications of increasing electromagnetic radiation from Wi-Fi and in particular 5G, which scientists across the globe are now concerned about, not just for human health, that's serious enough, but also for the environment. Thank you very much.
Okay. Right, I'm trying to remember where we started. So the first question was whether I was worried about this kind of singularity that's been speculated. I would go back to the Mike Wooldridge quote that say that none of our AI models that we've got at the moment would lead us to the point to suspect that AI is actually going to take over the world. They are just not that sophisticated. Our AI models are really good at doing specialist tasks. There is no path at the moment, no model at the moment for generating that generalized AI that could take over the world. However, this is the right time to think about that before it actually happens, so that we are prepared and that we have sort of policies and legal structures in place now in advance of that actually being a realistic proposition. But I do stress that current models, useful though they are, I cannot see, and indeed nor can Mike Wooldridge, see them going in that direction. You also asked about, am I worried about sort of cutting out the human, as it were? AI is a tool, or in fact more accurately a set of tools, that we should deploy as we wish to. So we are in control. I think you can put autonomy into systems where you want autonomy, where that's useful, particularly if, for instance, keeping humans out of hazardous situations is a classic example of building autonomy into a system. But on the other hand, AI could be used there to enhance human capabilities. So some people argue about AI standing for augmented intelligence, where you've got the AI there that's helping you, advising you, giving you valuable information and insights. So really the choice is yours, or is ours, I should say. Your final question was about radiation, and sorry, I can't answer that. I don't know the answer. Yeah.
Okay. One more question. We do need to move on. So, unfortunately, Adrian, I don't know whether you're going to be here for lunch or not. Or,
I will, yeah.
Okay, so anyone else can pick up their questions, hopefully, with Adrian at lunchtime. One more.
Yeah. This is related to AI safety as well, but not necessarily about the fanciful thoughts of singularities and taking over the world. So I'm a software engineer, been doing it over 25 years, and I spend a lot of time thinking about the verification and the validation of software I write and the systems I create. But I don't really see anyone talking about applying the same rules to AI systems. It seems that these AI systems are created and then tried out. So I was just wondering if you have any research or any work on actually validating that these systems will behave and that they've actually learned that what you thought you had taught them. Because there's many examples where a certain amount of training data has been given to an AI system and it's not actually learned what people expected.
Yeah. Well, you're right, actually. I mean, it's both a strength and a weakness of AI that it's designed to deal with unexpected situations, data it's not seen before, circumstances it's not seen before. So that's the positive side, is that it can deal with the unknowns. But the downside is that it's really difficult to be 100% certain that it will perform as you wish or as you expect. And in that way, AI systems are different from conventional procedural computer systems, where there are techniques, formal methods, etc., to absolutely 100% validate what they're going to do. So what I would come back to my second justification for using hybrids, which was using one technique to validate and confirm another, or indeed multiple techniques. So if you've got different techniques all drawing the same conclusion, that still doesn't give you 100% confirmation, but it certainly increases your confidence, I think, if you've got different techniques pointing towards the same conclusion and drawing and finding evidence that confirms the conclusion.